Pantou Wu is the greatest metropolis standing on Earth, the oldest city in human history. 3,250 years ago, all ethnicities on Earth developed from an economic community to a politically unified state, and the federal government, representing the central core of power, was established in this unprecedented grand metropolis. The existence of Pantou Wu signifies the disappearance of old civilizations, borders, religions, and ethnicities. Factors that have caused endless disputes no longer exist. After a devastating war, the federal state, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, gained new life. Under the strong rule of the federal government, this war-torn planet finally saw unprecedented peace and stability. Outside of Pantou Wu, there are 48 large cities where over 2 billion people reside. Outside the cities are ruins affected by nuclear pollution and cosmic radiation, which, according to the federal government's declaration, are no longer suitable for the propagation of any life. The most famous building in Pantou Wu is the Triangular Building, where the federal government's head and ministers work. This unique building is the tallest in the world and the pinnacle of human architectural technology. The building regulations of the federal government explicitly prohibit the construction of buildings taller than it, giving it the eternal honor of being the greatest. People call it the pyramid. It represents the birth of a great era, symbolizing the age where ancient wisdom has become an object of mockery and ridicule, reigning over the land. Pantou Wu is also the most crowded, polluted city on Earth, where the contrast between heaven and heck is most pronounced. Apart from the ruling class, most people live in days of hardship, relying on limited rations but working endlessly. When I arrived at one of the more than 200 helipads beside the pyramid in a military spacecraft, the afternoon sun was feebly dispersing its dim light in the smog formed by pollution. Stepping out of the spacecraft, a twin-jet vehicle was already waiting by the movable ladder, its engine grumbling impatiently. The cold wind howled. I turned up the collar of my thick coat to block the cold current that cut like a blade. It is said that before the federal state emerged, the Earth had distinct seasons, but I can't imagine what summer is like. An army captain sent by the Military Intelligence Bureau stood straight beside the open car door, waiting with the usual cold face of a federal officer. In today's world, where there are no opposing countries, the army has become the natural tool to suppress any resistance against central disturbances. The Intelligence Bureau within the military is a terrifying organization no one wants to get involved with, and this time I was invited to visit them. The host no guest dares to refuse. The captain saluted. "Marshal, peace be upon you." I hurriedly raised my hand in response. "Marshal, peace be upon you." The captain coldly said, "Sage Danjia, you are 18 minutes late. Major General Li Shur of the Intelligence Bureau is waiting for you." There was no need to explain. I belong to the temple. As long as I haven't committed treason, no one, including the Intelligence Bureau, would dare to punish me, because those who can enter the temple are the top-notch scientists, and I am one of the few among the 72 sages qualified to vie for the position of the Holy Master and the youngest sage. The current Holy Master of the temple is Holy Master Magiana, a master of artificial intelligence and neuromicroscience. He is not only known as the father of robots, but is also valued by the authorities for his recent research on super soldiers, a groundbreaking study using medicine and microtechnology to enhance human physical abilities and vitality. However, it is said that he has recently encountered a deadlock in his research, and the marshal and his high-ranking officials are becoming increasingly dissatisfied with him. In contemplation, I sat inside the twin-jet vehicle. At the same time, the jet car lifted off the ground, effortlessly cutting through the air, gliding up towards the cloud-piercing, tomb-like triangular building. The pyramid, filled with honeycomb-like entrances, constantly expanded before my eyes, like a giant monster with no end. The pyramid is not only a symbol of power but also commands 12 integrated military corps with 1 million soldiers, as well as millions of civilian and military technicians. It is also a powerful war fortress. Covering an area of 1.2 million acres, the world's largest building has corridors and flying paths for spacecraft that extend over 260 miles. Whether pedestrian corridors or flying paths, all are spacious enough for more than 20 people to walk hand in hand at any angle. The exposed part of the pyramid has 328 floors, not counting the underground part, which is a top secret of the Federal Army. However, it is certain that it houses self-sufficient military advanced industries, destructive weapons capable of destroying the entire world, and a spider web of underground tunnels spreading from it to all corners of Pantou Wu. Anyone wishing to take down this fortress must consider the 1,500 defensive posts set at key points around the pyramid and nearly 10,000 stationed patrol fighters. The entire colossal structure's energy comes from 10 artificial satellites in the sky, which absorb solar heat, convert it into energy beams, and inject it into the pyramid's 27 energy storage reservoirs. Hence, some call the pyramid the Devil's Horn. At the tip of the Devil's Horn is the Marshal's Palace, where the Marshal's confidants keep in constant contact with other major cities, issuing the Marshal's orders. Duty officers can monitor every location in the world in detail through hundreds of TV screens, using more than 3,000 spy satellites scattered in the sky, and take various corresponding measures. In the history of the federal state, dozens of armed rebellions have occurred, but they quickly disintegrated and disappeared under the swift and efficient strikes from the war center within the pyramid. The temple was originally also set in the pyramid, but ever since the temple incident, of which no one knows the details, the former Holy Master, father of solar energy Holy Master Dagashi, mysteriously disappeared. Some say he was sent to the guillotine by the Marshal, while others say he infiltrated underground organizations and openly resisted the Federation. In the vast space around the pyramid, only scattered flying jets, spacecraft, and the military's small but powerful agile fighters contrast sharply with the densely packed aerial traffic over Pantou Wu City, like flies swarming for food. Inside the jet car I was riding, the captain was contacting the defense center of the pyramid to go through the routine procedure for entering the pyramid. Any object attempting to approach the pyramid without approval would be shot down by laser. Power has always been established on rules of intimidation. But there are indeed places where intense anti-government revolutions are erupting, though little is known because the Intelligence Bureau tightly seals all news unfavorable to the regime. Even with my status, I cannot escape being ignorant, let alone the common people trampled below. The twin jet car flew through a spiral flying path at the base of the pyramid. The solid corridor made of synthetic metal shone with rainbow-colored light on all four walls, a unique phenomenon caused by air friction as the jet car flew. It was like flying into a never-ending dream. The jet car flew diagonally upwards. The higher the rank of an official, the closer their office is to the tip of the pyramid, which represents the pinnacle of federal power. After a round of strict inspection, I finally met the highest figure in the Intelligence Bureau, Major General Li Shi. Li Shi shook my hand in the office with a not too cold, not too warm attitude. When the guards withdrew, he said lightly, "Sage Dongjia, I suppose you've already seen the information about this mission." I didn't answer but asked back, "Where is she?" Li Shi sat back behind his desk and gestured for me to sit in the chair opposite him. The wall on the left split open, revealing a 10-foot square screen that displayed the scene inside the cell. She was wearing snow-white clothes, with her long eyes closed, without the slightest movement, like a lifeless statue. If it weren't for the slight rise and fall of her chest, she would appear as if she had no life. At first glance, she seemed ordinary and unremarkable, with short hair and a thin body, like a malnourished boy, more than a vibrant young woman in her 20s. The only thing that made her different was her face, pale without a trace of blood, bringing a peace and tranquility that penetrated deep into the human heart. I wanted to see her eyes hidden behind her eyelids. Li Shi's cold voice dragged my thoughts away from the scene on the screen. I heard him say, "Since our Special Operations Group from the Intelligence Bureau captured her from the East District of Pantou Wu 23 days ago, she has been sitting like this, not saying a word or moving an inch. Her eyelids haven't even flickered. If not for injecting nutrients into her body, she would have died long ago." I looked at this significant figure within the federal government, whose flat and plain facial contours sometimes showed an amiable smile that didn't match his cold tone. With his fat body, he could easily make people mistakenly think he was easygoing at first glance. Only when his slender eyes, narrowed into a line 99% of the time, opened did the sharp light flash, revealing the mystery and the power of life and death he wields without hesitation. It was said that if something happened to the marshal, Major General Li Shi would be the military's preferred successor. My gaze returned to the woman on the screen. She was still so calm, like a lake, still but unfathomably deep. You wouldn't associate her with any emotions like fear, boredom, or disappointment. Compared to the polluted, crowded outside world, she possessed something else, something Li Shi and I could not understand. I said in a deep voice, she violated the federal religious law and should have been sent to the guillotine immediately. Why is she still sitting here, consuming valuable nutrients? Li Shi's eyes, always cold and unwavering, showed a trace of sharpness, his voice colder than the 18th layer of heck, saying, "Respectable sage, we require your unparalleled knowledge of human physiology and psychology to conduct the most detailed analysis of this prisoner's mind, not to ask questions. I need you to tell me every thought in her mind, including every encounter in her dreams. Now it's you who must satisfy my requirements, not me to satisfy your curiosity." I smiled. "General, you are mistaken. I have no interest in anything outside of my work. I just need to know her inside and out. Otherwise, the final result may not satisfy you." Li Shi remained impassive, revealing nothing about his inner feelings, and it was impossible to know if I had angered him. Suddenly, he showed a sincere smile and warmly said, "I forgot about your renowned tough guy style. All right, let's start over." I was in awe of his unpredictability. It was rumored that Li Shi always smiled when he killed. He pondered for a moment, then changed the topic. "Do you know why she was locked up?" I looked at the woman on the screen. She was still calm, like a lake, but deeper than what I could grasp. I said in a deep voice on the way here. I read the confidential file handed to me, pointing out that in just 1 year, she gathered tens of thousands of people in Pantou Wu to follow her, forming a nameless yet real religious organization with beliefs incomprehensible to outsiders. Li Shi grunted. "The federal religious law prohibits all activities related to religious superstition. Although she did not openly promote religion, her incomprehensible behavior is even more dangerous. Therefore, the marshal issued a strict order. This is the most serious violation of religious law in federal history and must be eradicated." His hand formed a knife shape, slashing through the air with a cutting motion, and he coldly said, "Therefore, we invite you to deal with them. You should know that the biggest problem now is that we know nothing about her religion. Your responsibility is to find this out, discover their doctrines and what they believe in, so that we can fundamentally devise a way to destabilize and eradicate them. Remember, the marshal wants them eradicated, not just finding a few hundred or even tens of thousands of people to serve as an example. Though if necessary, I won't hesitate to do so." I frowned. "I know you have a psychological and spiritual assessment expert group, which specializes in studying the psychological factors and spiritual realms of human behavior for the Intelligence Bureau. My university classmate Dr. Hanwei is also a member. Such a simple task could have been done by them using advanced detection equipment, drugs, or even neurochemical alterations to find the answer easily." Li Shi seemed to have deflated, struck at his weak point, saying, "I sent out the 3 best experts, including your good classmate Dr. Hanwei, to investigate. Would you like to know what happened to them?" Seeing the curiosity in my eyes, this high-ranking figure sighed. "Your good classmate went missing, and the other 2 committed suicide. Every captured follower has a way to die without any external force. I don't understand. I really don't understand." His voice gradually faded, filled with an eerie fear of what was beyond comprehension. A chill swept through my heart. This wasn't in the confidential file handed to me. "So, this is why you invited me." A strange light flashed in Li Shi's eyes, and he smiled slightly. "Though I do not oppose your help, it was not I who recommended you, but her." "Her?" Beep. The transmitter on the platform sounded, and the secretary's gentle voice came through. "General, Special Envoy Zhuanhui has just arrived." The 2 words Zhuanhui pierced into my nerves like lightning, exploding a thunderbolt in my brain, causing my heart to beat violently. Li Shi's voice came from a distant, unreachable place. "Please let the special envoy in." Sweat beads formed in my palm, completely ignoring the warm and moderate indoor air. The heavy metal door, equipped with a powerful anti-laser device, retracted to the sides, revealing the passage leading inside. A blonde beauty in a full military uniform, brimming with heroism, strode in. It was indeed her. She was still so proud, exuding an overwhelming charm, with long, enchanting eyes that shone with an awe-inspiring light, and a straight, powerful waist, perfectly supporting her self-confidence and arrogance. Juanhui, a woman I loved most and hated the most. 7 years ago, when I was 26, she left me, taking away the only warmth in this cold world and stealing the only color in this colorless earth. Wasn't she married to a military advisor of the marshal? I didn't expect she had now become the marshal's special envoy. Shouldn't her ambition for political power be satisfied now? Juanhui raised her left hand flat. Peace be upon you, Marshal. Li Shi raised his hand in response. Peace be upon you, Marshal. Juanhui smiled brightly, dazzling everyone. General, Heko, the Marshal ordered me to greet you. After a few polite exchanges, Juanhui's bright and profound eyes swept towards me like a rainbow, saying calmly, Sage Danjia, this is a rare opportunity. I hope you can grasp it well. Fame, status, and power are all within your reach. Just close your hand, and everything is yours. In this moment, in countless days before, in lonely, dark nights with no one around, I cursed myself, cursed her, hated myself, and hated her thousands of times. But now, when she stood before me, alive and vibrant, my head, which was once filled with love and hate, was blank and bewildered. There was no trace of hatred, but full of anticipation of love. Could it be that my self-respect had been exhausted when I begged her to stay years ago? Sage Danjia. Her call woke me up, and I stammered, yes, I understand. I reminded myself that today I am no longer an ordinary researcher, but a sage of the temple with an extraordinary status. The hateful thing is, no matter how I remind myself, I always seem a notch shorter before her. Li Shi interrupted. All right, let's get to work. Her eyes focused on me. Honestly, my composure and thoughts were completely disrupted by Juanhui's appearance. I couldn't think of much, reluctantly saying, I want to go into the cell and talk to her. Juanhui glanced at Li Shi for his opinion. Li Shi said without hesitation, Sage Danjia is an authority in the Federation in psychology and spirit. I will fully support whatever he wants to do. Besides, he is the only one with mental exchange ability. I silently praised Li Shi's trust in people without reservation attitude, which is a key to his success. But I also knew that if I displeased him, his ruthlessness would be unbearable to most people. Leaving Li Shi's office, Juanhui and I walked side by side in the empty, enormous corridor. Apart from our breathing, there were only footsteps and their echoes. I softly asked, how should I address you now, Mrs.? Juanhui looked forward, coldly saying, I am divorced. I was stunned, a surge of hope passing through my heart. Why am I still so obsessed with her? Juanhui spoke with a tone that kept a distance. I am a person who separates public and private matters. Let's finish the job first, then talk about other things. The heart that died 7 years ago suddenly came alive. Did she still have deep feelings for me, recommending me to take on such an important task? Did those words mean that once the job is done, the flames of love could rekindle? A sense of inferiority and self-pity welled up inside me, sinking me into a mood of melancholy. I originally thought that these 7 years of torment would make me cold-hearted, but I am still so vulnerable. I have thrown myself into research all these years, working hard mainly because I wanted to regain my dignity, not let her look down on me. All for a woman who abandoned me. Thinking of her fiery, alluring body and understanding nature, the core of my heart felt like a pile of burning embers. At the end of the corridor, we stopped in front of a tightly closed door. Juanhui placed her left hand on the door lock scanner, and the thick, 1-foot metal door split in the middle, retracting to the sides. She said, only 4 people can open this door now. You, me, Li Shi, and his top aide Jian Yan. The marshal ordered to isolate her from everyone to prevent the religious bacteria from spreading like a plague. I nodded in agreement. In human history before the federal state emerged, religion was undeniably a source of conflict, and history has proven that once religion starts to spread, no political force can eradicate it. Juan stepped inside the door, and I followed closely behind. Her tight military uniform revealed her graceful figure, and just the back view could make a man drool. The door closed behind us. I saw her immediately. This was an observation room adjacent to the cell, with a wall-sized one-way mirror between the two rooms. Through the mirror and the hidden audio system, we could monitor every movement in the cell without letting the person know. Juan glanced at me, expert. You can go in and have a heart-to-heart talk with her. Remember, Li Shi and I will see and hear everything, and every detail will be recorded. I knew this, but she had to remind me. Does that mean she still cares about me? Is concerned about me? I walked to the door of the cell and stopped, looking at the cold metal door, asking slowly, did the Special Operations Group of the Intelligence Bureau cause any riots when they arrested her? Her healthy, magnetic voice came from behind. When she received the arrest warrant, she stood up without a word and followed the people who arrested her. At the time, a dozen followers were sitting silently beside her, all silent. We would rather they rioted, so we could have an excuse to clear them out. I suddenly understood. The federal government's biggest headache was not being able to catch their weaknesses. These people neither let the government know their beliefs nor put up any resistance, making it impossible for the federal government, which ostensibly upholds the rule of law, to act. Though the marshal has supreme power, his power comes from military support. If he catches tens of thousands of people without reason and sends them to the guillotine, it will arouse public anger. Then, those in the military, like Li Shi, who covet his position, will seize the opportunity to overthrow him and take his place. Of course, this religion will disappear from then on. So, my current job is to use my knowledge of psychology and spirit to find their crimes, and then, as a revered sage, accuse them in federal court, acting as the marshal's executioner. I asked in a deep voice, what is her name? In the file handed to me, she was referred to only as prisoner number 1. Juan said, no one knows her name or her background. She is not on the register, but her followers call her the Dream Woman. Dream Woman. I finally entered the cell. Unconsciously, I lightened my footsteps and sat in the empty chair across the table from her. Her pale face had no trace of blood, defined yet not considered beautiful, but it had an undeniable delicate grace. She seemed so frail, as if in dire need of protection and care. Her long eyes looked as if they would never open. The cell was unusually quiet, a kind of silence so beautiful that one would not dare to disturb it. The bright light made her snow-white prison uniform and pale face appear transparent, without a trace of impurity. I focused my mind, preparing to probe and speculate on the Dream Woman's psychology and spirit. Telepathy is an ancient science with thousands of years of history. In its initial primitive stage, people used crude tools like the lie detector or brainwave scanner to detect psychological and physiological reactions through the speed of electric waves and magnetic fields in the human nervous system. However, in the post-industrial age before the federal government was established, this discipline had developed significantly. Today, precise instruments can see the images inside the human brain, even in dreams. But the real breakthrough had to wait for my research, which was the greatest breakthrough in telepathy. No computer in the world is more sophisticated than the human brain, and no instrument can better detect another brain than the human brain itself. After studying thousands of people with extraordinary mental powers, I successfully developed mental confluence, an interaction between one mind and another, the best method for one mind to probe another. Through ancient spiritual training, brain nerve modifications, and chemically induced changes from medicine, I became a leading expert in mental confluence. However, it's an exhausting task, so I don't easily use it in everyday interactions. This made me the most prestigious sage in the temple, second only to the Holy Master. The Dream Woman sat quietly, as still as a calm lake. What force could support this frail body to sit without speaking or moving for over 20 days? The data showed that all existing instruments for detecting the mind had no effect on her. I began to speculate about her. Her breathing was faint. Her heart beat 3 times slower than a normal person's. In her fragile life, there seemed to be incredible strength. My heart inexplicably trembled, an indescribable feeling. It seemed that while I was observing her, she was also observing me. This was an unprecedented feeling. All those I had previously performed mental testing on could only passively accept it. I sensed the tranquility and purity of her inner world. The dream woman's eyelashes were long and shone under the bright light. My mind called out, "Dream woman." On the surface, she remained calm, but I detected a change in her emotions, including astonishment and curiosity. She was paying attention to me, feeling me. Suddenly, I hated the role of interrogator that I was playing. If the environment were different, if the relationship were different, the dream woman would be my dream research subject in the field of mental confluence. Unexpectedly, her eyelashes trembled. It was like waking up from a long sleep that lasted for centuries. She opened her eyes. I finally saw her eyes. I had never seen such eyes before. They were like two dreams, the deepest and sweetest dreams. Through her brilliant, sparkling eyes, I entered a tranquil, boundless world. She completely opened herself up, allowing me, the intruder, to enter. Yet I hesitated, afraid of getting lost, as if being trapped in the sweetest and most beautiful dream, unable to extricate myself. I almost groaned in agony and closed my eyes. The mental connection was severed like a blade. Everything returned to normal. When I opened my eyes again, the dream woman was quietly looking at me, her gaze soft like the moon on the water, hiding endless sorrow. Her gaze wasn't static. It was like two burning fires, able to turn my heart into pliable heat. The most shocking thing was the burning love emanating from it, a deep love long lost. My mind trembled. Juanhui and Li Shi were monitoring my every move. A slight misstep could lead to death. As long as the marshal approved, Li Shi could easily arrange for my accidental death. In a clash of interests, Juanhui would not hesitate to sacrifice me, her lover from 7 years ago whom she had abandoned. Her gaze gradually changed, filled with pity, as if our roles had been reversed, and Sage Danjia was the one imprisoned. My status as the leading authority in mental confluence was nothing compared to her, like the difference between a flashlight and the sun. Sigh. Her heavy sigh echoed in my mind. I lost my composure and suddenly stood up. Her gaze returned to its peaceful calm. Taking a deep breath, I sat back in my chair. I understood everything that happened to Dr. Hanwei and his 2 colleagues when they came into contact with her. My experience was deeper because my ability in mental confluence far surpassed theirs. I sensed her saying, "I finally found someone who can truly connect with my mind." Juanhui and the others were watching. I kept reminding myself of this fact. Dream woman, who exactly are you? Is your religion based on this kind of mental transmission? What is its purpose? The dream woman's eyelashes trembled a few times, and her eyelids slowly closed, sealing off the dream-like world. I tried to probe her mind but found no way in. A wave of fatigue spread throughout my body. I had done something beyond my capabilities. I stood up and wobbled towards the door. Juanhui opened the door from outside. I stepped out, and the door closed behind me. Juanhui stood before me, her sharp, beautiful eyes searching for any clue about my contact with the dream woman. The exhaustion of my mental energy made me dizzy. I fell forward, onto Juanhui's firm body. Juanhui held me by the waist, supporting me with her body. The familiar fragrance I hadn't smelled in 7 years entered my nostrils, taking me from one dream into another. Juanhui still spoke in that cold tone. "Sage Danjia, take a break before you report." These words were like cold water being poured over me. Why didn't she sympathize with my exhaustion? Why is everything based on utility? I thought of the dream woman's understanding and compassionate eyes. Looking back at the cell, she still sat like a statue. But my impression of her had changed completely. She represented a beautiful dream, a dream that humanity had been pursuing since its evolution began. Li Shi's voice came through the transmitter. "Special Envoy Juanhui, Sage Danjia needs a good rest. I have booked 2 rooms on the top floor of the Federal Hotel for you both. A spaceship is waiting to take you there. I will meet you here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." At dusk, I woke up from a deep sleep. The magnificent night view of Pantou Wu, countless points of light extending in all directions beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass. I remembered that this was a luxurious room on the highest floor, the 152nd floor, of the Federal Hotel, where only sages and local officials with real power could stay. I sat in the rocking chair by the window, silently gazing at the pyramid, which stood like a solitary peak among the lower buildings. The tip was covered by thick polluted clouds. I thought of the dream woman's eyes. There were endless stories and worlds within them, waiting for me to discover and experience. I hated the current relationship between us. Her burning gaze was still in my heart, the passage and entrance into her mind. The jets flying over Pantou Wu drew beautiful lines in the sky, adding to the magnificent cityscape. Is this greatest city of mankind as beautiful inside as it is on the outside? The image of the dream woman wouldn't leave me. I felt the hope in my heart spreading like a forest fire, yearning for another encounter with the dream woman. It wasn't the desire of an interrogator to extract information, but the wish to participate in the beautiful world of her mind. I knew that as long as I opened the door to my own mind, she could enter, allowing me to separate her world and let her share mine. Although living in this cold, utilitarian, deceitful society for so many years, what I could offer her was very limited. No matter how people deceive themselves, humanity is destined to live in their isolated island universes from birth. But if I opened myself to the dream woman, she could merge two isolated individuals into one. She would become me, and I would become her. Is this the true meaning of love? The ultimate of love? Is the final goal of human pursuit of love this kind of union? Life comes from the union of bodies. Should the pinnacle of life be reached through the union of minds? The doorbell rang. Who? I stood up from the rocking chair. The door opened, and a tall, graceful woman in a hotel staff uniform pushed a cart full of food and fruits inside. In the Federation, fruits are grown in greenhouses and are extremely precious. The maid smiled, Sage. Your dinner is here. The special envoy ordered it for you. I was shaken. Since waking up from the deep sleep, I had not thought of Juanhui. I felt a sense of liberation, like a spell being lifted. My stomach growled. It was time to eat. I sat at the dining table, wondering what Juanhui was doing in the next room. Did she come to see me while I was sleeping? The maid gently placed a snow-white napkin over my chest and then picked up the knife and fork to cut the steak on my plate. Her hands were snow-white and slender. I said in surprise, "Let me do it myself." The maid smiled like a blooming flower. "I was specially transferred from the marshal's residence to serve you. If I don't serve you well, I will be severely punished." I looked up and carefully observed her for the first time. Her delicate, defined face and smooth skin. Her well-proportioned, slender figure, though not as captivating as Juanhui, was a rare beauty. It is said that the marshal recruited a group of outstanding beauties from all over to reward those who have rendered meritorious service. This rumor seems to be true, which also shows the marshal's attention to the dream woman incident. Under my gaze, her pretty face turned red, and she said softly, "My name is Cece, number 18 in the marshal's residence. Whatever you require, I will do my best to satisfy you." My heart wavered, then was replaced by another emotion. What power turns this girl into a flower that can be picked at will? What power deprived the dream woman of her freedom? Sadly, I am one of the accomplices of this power. Even I was surprised. Why had I never had such rebellious thoughts before? I only felt that contributing to the Federation was an unparalleled honor. Has the dream woman changed me? Cece sat beside me, feeding the cut pieces of meat into my mouth and pouring me a full glass of wine, serving diligently. I unconsciously tried to probe her gently and found that her mind was entirely focused on me, filled with admiration and curiosity. I also sensed her wondering at my silence, completely unlike the other lustful men she had encountered. After dinner, Cece cleaned up the dishes and stacked them on the cart. After pouring me another glass of wine, she pushed the cart away. I picked up the glass, sat back down in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking Pantou Wu at night, gently rocking the chair, my thoughts surging. The door opened again, and footsteps sounded. At first, I thought it was Cece. When the person walked directly behind me, I knew it wasn't her. Juanhui's voice came from behind. "Are you feeling better?" Her tone was less icy than before. I felt her influence on me had significantly diminished and replied calmly, "Look, how beautiful it is out there." She sat down on the chair beside me. I remained silent, not looking at her. Juanhui sighed. Do you still hate me? I shook my head. Even I didn't know what that meant. Juanhui was silent for a moment, then slowly said, What did you find out from the dream woman? I turned to look at her, meeting her bright eyes coldly. This isn't the right time to discuss work, is it? Juanhui was taken aback, realizing for the first time that I was out of her control. Danjie was no longer the lover who begged her to stay. She avoided my gaze and looked out the window. Her chest heaved rapidly, her emotions uncontrollably fluctuating. In the past, I would have taken advantage of this and guessed what was on her mind. But now, I wanted to save every bit of my energy for the second encounter with the dream woman tomorrow. Juanhui quickly regained her composure. Juanhui pointed into the distance. The east of the city is the slum. The spread of the dream woman's religion started from that area. Following her direction, I looked into the distance, imagining the scene when people first met the dream woman. Juanhui said, Throughout history, religions have always started from the bottom of society. Only among dissatisfied people do gods have a market. Who in this world would be satisfied? Juanhui left me because of dissatisfaction, striving to climb higher in society. The definition of satisfaction should be without further thought, but who can achieve that? I softly asked her like in our passionate days, Hui, are you satisfied? Whether it was my tone or my question, she suddenly fell silent. I said, If I weren't a sage, would you be sitting here talking to me? Juanhui's sharp eyes met mine. Why ask questions that make people unhappy? I looked at her coldly. Suddenly, I felt that she, who was always high above, was just another pitiful person. I couldn't help but try to probe her lightly, feeling her heart filled with unease and astonishment. My calm demeanor was far beyond her calculations. She didn't understand me. Since coming out of the cell, Danjie had been reborn because he knew where the true dream lay. Silence took over our space again. Juanhui sighed. I know you still hate me, but I haven't forgotten you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting next to me now. I couldn't help but laugh. Sorry, I can't accept that statement. No one is more qualified for this job than I am. Otherwise, would the marshal and Li Shi have agreed to my selection? I am no longer the unknown guy you left 7 years ago, but a sage qualified to compete for the position of Holy Master. I am not only the founding master of mental confluence, but also an authority in psychology and medicine. Miss Xuan, this is a change you could never have imagined. Juanhui breathed rapidly, obviously angered by my merciless words. She didn't expect me to refuse to let her off even after she made concessions. I looked up at the sky. The polluted air prevented me from seeing any stars. If it weren't for the former Holy Master Father of Solar Energy Dagashi successfully finding a way to use solar energy, air pollution would be even more serious. Unfortunately, this extraordinary person has disappeared. I vaguely understand now the reason he rebelled against the Federation, as I seem to be walking down this dangerous road. Juanhui forced a calm voice. Jia, you've changed? I was shaken. She didn't call me Sage Danjie, but called me as she did when we were in love. What exactly did she want to indicate? I turned to her, looking deeply into her bright eyes, speaking slowly and in a low tone. In a long-ago era, in forgotten days, a poet once said, We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Have you heard this? Juanhui was a bit caught off guard. That sounds more like a riddle than a poem, like a mystifying chant. Who would bother to make unnecessary guesses? I sighed. No, you're wrong. He's talking about how since the beginning of human civilization, we've been searching for something outside of ourselves, something we've dreamed of, which will never succeed. Because the most precious treasure is our mind, which is both the starting point and the end. Can you understand? I didn't care about her reaction. Suddenly, I realized that everything was insignificant, including fame, status, power, even love with Juanhui, and even life and death. I knew that my starting point and end were in that cell, in that great mind wrapped in a frail body. That was also my newfound religion and belief. I understood. Juanhui stood up. It's late. Good night. Without probing her mind, I knew she wanted me to say something to make her stay. I stood up, walked to her, and looked at her deeply. Juanhui's beautiful eyes were covered with a veil of confusion, not understanding my actions. It was my various behaviors that were so different from before that gave her a fresh feeling and rekindled love. In terms of thought, demeanor, and self-confidence, I was vastly different from the Danjie she had left. I looked at this woman who would do anything to climb up with pity. She was, after all, the one I deeply loved. I brought my lips close to hers, lightly imprinting a kiss on her moist red lips, and softly said, "Good night." A flash of disappointment crossed her eyes, and she left gracefully. Watching her alluring back, I almost wanted to change my mind and call her back, but in the end, I suppressed the impulse. As soon as Juanhui left, Cece came in. I felt the joy in her heart. Cece clearly had a great fondness for me. Unfortunately, what I needed was not physical contact but the flow and fusion of minds. Cece went into the bathroom to prepare for my bath. The sound of water filled the luxurious bathtub, which could accommodate 10 people. Yet I was thinking about why I could enjoy this, while other civilians in Pantou had to live in poor and crowded conditions. The only fair thing is that they have the same inner world. The dream woman's existence is awakening their dormant minds. Cece smiled as she stood by the bathroom door. "Sage, let me assist you in bathing and massage." If I refused her, she would be reprimanded. Besides, she was so hard to refuse. Soaking in the warm water, I cleared my mind of all thoughts, enjoying the cleansing of the water. My encounter with the dream woman gave me a renewed life. Cece changed into a revealing swimsuit that showed off her youthful and full figure, meticulously washing me. I asked her, "How old are you?" Cece said, 20, Sage. "You are younger than I imagined. I thought all sages were old men with hunched backs. You are stronger than athletes." My heart stirred. Her words might indicate that she had served other sages. I couldn't help but ask, "Have you met other sages?" She stopped her hand, whispering, "I'm sorry. We were instructed not to reveal who we have been in contact with." I nodded understandingly, but I had already glimpsed the answer through peering into her mind. It was Holy Master Majianeng, and from the vivid image of the Holy Master in her memory cells, it seemed it had happened recently. There was a great possibility that Majianeng was in Pantou Wu. I didn't like Majianeng. His mind was full of treachery and hatred. To please the marshal, he devoted himself to researching a method to turn people into powerful killing machines, known as the Super Soldier Project. This made him the most favored Holy Master, but it was rumored that his costly research had reached an unsolvable deadlock, and the marshal's dissatisfaction with him was growing. Cece said softly, "You are very silent, like always contemplating profound questions." I asked, "Don't you think about things?" She bowed her head. "Thinking makes people feel bitter." After the bath, I lay on the wide bed, letting her massage me. Soon, I fell into a deep sleep. Near dawn, I woke up. The completely naked Cece was sleeping like a kitten in my arms. I gently pushed her away, put on the robe, and barefooted, stepped onto the thick, soft carpet. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the human civilization below. There was the sound of clothes rustling behind me. Before long, the girl I had awakened stood before me, looking up at me. I asked gently, "Why not sleep a bit more?" Cece was uneasy. "You don't like me? Why don't you want me?" I embraced her full figure and said solemnly, "No, you're a very lovely girl. It's just that this isn't the right time or the right circumstance." Cece trembled. "Sage, I don't understand, but I really want to make you happy." I held her by the bed. "You're a lovely girl, but tomorrow I have something very important to do. Before dawn, get a good sleep." Her small mouth moved toward me, giving me a fierce kiss on the lips, softly saying, "You are a very special person and a good man." I laid her down on the bed, covered her with a blanket, my mind flying to the second encounter with the dream woman tomorrow. The cell door opened before me for the second time. The dream woman sat peacefully with her eyes closed. I sat down in front of her. The dream woman didn't move. I felt Juanhui outside the room and Li Shi in his office, both watching us intently, so I couldn't let them detect any of my true intentions. I looked at the dream woman, concentrating my spirit. The power that usually took a while to gather concentrated almost instantly. She was helping me. As soon as the thought arose, the dream woman's eyes suddenly opened, not slowly as last time. Boom. A wave of energy flooded into my brain from her eyes. A strange and intense pain spread through every nerve. My entire world of perception spun. Every cell in my body seemed about to explode. I heard my own scream coming from a place I couldn't see or touch. Boom. It was like 3 powerful bombs exploding in my brain, followed by absolute silence. Then I heard a strange roaring sound. It turned out to be my own breathing. Then I felt my existence again. Perfect tranquility. I didn't fully understand what had happened, but I vaguely sensed that the dream woman had done something magical to me, causing some indescribable anomaly in me. Danjia. Danjia. Juanhui's voice calling me through the transmitter gradually grew louder, filled with anxiety and concern. She might have been calling for a long time, and only now did I hear it. I opened my eyes. The dream woman's eyes were closed again. Somehow, I felt she was extremely tired, her face pale and weary. Danjia. Danjia. I reached out to stop Juanhui from calling me. Power surged within me, not just physical strength but more apparent mental strength. What exactly happened? The dream woman's voice sounded in my mind. I finally found someone who can accept true love. My love has been fully given to you. I am so tired, so tired. Her voice gradually faded. My mind responded, I don't understand. The dream woman didn't answer, no response at all. I sat silently in Li Shi's office. I felt more energized than ever, and as if I had gained something more. The dream woman on the closed-circuit television screen was still so peaceful. Juanhui stood before me, her eyes shooting a chilling glare, staring fixedly at me. Although I couldn't see Li Shi, I could still feel his sharp, eagle-like eyes piercing my back. Juanhui said sternly, Sage Danjia, I need you to report every detail in the cell, word for word. This is of utmost importance. Any inconsistency with the facts will be considered a crime of deceiving the federal government, with severe consequences. The room temperature was still appropriately moderate, but I felt extremely cold. A slight misstep, and it would be an eternal doom. The Intelligence Bureau was notorious for eliminating dissidents. Li Shi's mocking voice. Sage Danjia, you don't seem to be up to your job. I calmly guessed their thoughts. Juanhui's true heart betrayed her cold exterior, filled with fear and unease, even with some concern for me. Li Shi's mind was cold and cruel, but deep down, he couldn't hide a trace of fear, the fear of the dream woman. As soon as I finished guessing, another thought popped into my mind, almost making me scream. In the past, when I tried to guess others' thoughts, it was always very laborious and vague, never as easy and deep as now. I understood. The dream woman transferred some strange power into me during our mental connection. No wonder my nerves were so painful earlier. It was a process of transformation. I was so excited I forgot to answer. I still didn't understand why the dream woman would treat this stranger like this. Juanhui impatiently said, Sage. I stood up, moving between them so I could see them both, calmly saying, Your mistake was not understanding what I was doing. Juanhui's beautiful eyes lit up, waiting for me to explain further. If it didn't require her to sacrifice anything she currently had, she still had deep feelings for me. A slight sneer appeared at the corner of Li Shi's mouth. I sensed him thinking, let's see what tricks this kid's mental confluence has. I said, to understand the dream woman's religious allure, the only way is to test it personally. That's what I did in the cell twice. Li Shi sneered. I hope you haven't become her follower. I interrogated her too, but she didn't even bother to open her eyes. You at least managed that. Juanhui interjected. What exactly did you find out? I spoke authoritatively. Have you ever heard of astral projection? Li Shi grunted. Of course, that's a fictional theme in novels, saying that the human spirit can travel to any corner of the universe in an instant, free from the body. Sage, is it like that? Although he appeared calm and indifferent on the surface, I detected the turbulent waves in his mind. Deep down, he believed the words of this expert. I needed to use this. I sneered. This isn't some fictional plot, but the reality before your eyes. My finger pointed at the dream woman on the screen. Both of their eyes turned cold. I didn't allow them time to think, pressing on. When I first entered the cell and used the mental confluence technique to establish a mental connection with her. Juanhui interrupted. Wait. First, We want you to explain why she would believe you. You are clearly someone sent by the federal government. Even I didn't know why the dream woman would favor me, but I certainly couldn't say that. Fortunately, they didn't understand mental confluence. I pretended to be calm and smiled slightly. This is rather difficult to explain, but unfortunately, I can't avoid it. Before entering the cell, I sensed that the dream woman had mental powers, so I devised a strategy to let her mind sense that I was one of her kind, someone who believed the spirit was more important than the material, even beyond the federal government, beyond all worldly matters. Do you understand? Li Shi said coldly. I hope you don't really think so, or you'll be sent to the cell next to hers. Juanhui said, okay. Assuming she was fooled by you and conducted a mental confluence with you, how do you know she has the power of astral projection? Li Shi reminded, make it clear because every word and expression will be presented to the marshal's governance group. I spread my hands. It happened during the second entry into the cell. I felt her send a strange power into my nerves, stimulating a part of my nervous system. But before I could determine which part it was, Special Envoy Juanhui called me. Because I was in a state of mental confluence with her, I clearly felt her suspicion of me, interrupting the energy transfer. If only I had more time. This was half true and half false. True that she did send some strange energy to me. False that I had no idea what was happening at the time. The dream woman didn't suspect me either. Li Shi was stunned. So, it was the special envoy who made a mistake? Juanhui's face sank. General, you better be careful with your words. Then she turned to me. What does that have to do with astral projection? I knew I had turned the previous disadvantage around. It's simple. When her mental powers stimulated my central nervous system, I felt my entire spirit wanting to leave the body. According to my years of research, this is the preliminary stage of astral projection, the phenomenon of out-of-body experience. Juanhui said in a daze, if she really has the power of astral projection, couldn't she roam freely, even come here to listen to us? I said confidently, rest assured, I am an expert in mental confluence. If she had indeed astral projected here, I could sense it. Her astral projection seems to be another form of mental travel, not like a ghost that can appear at will. Li Shi's face turned as ugly as it could get, muttering, if she really possesses the power of astral projection and can make others acquire this power, the problem is 100 times more severe than the marshal and I had imagined. I emphasized, yes. If everyone had the power of astral projection, humanity would enter a new era. The old social order would dissolve, and no one would know what would happen next. Li Shi shouted, no, I must stop it. I said coldly, unless I can have another mental confluence with the dream woman, I can't think of a way to deal with it. Li Shi squinted at me. Sage Danjia, I want you to immediately go to the followers of the dream woman, use your mental confluence technique, find out how deep her influence is, and whether they have the power of astral projection, then report back to me. This bigwig of the federal government, without waiting for my answer, pressed the intercom to connect with his secretary outside. Jin Yin, come in? I felt a chill in my heart. If Li Shi was the sharp blade of the federal government, Jin Yin was the tip of the blade. He was always the first to pierce into the enemy target's body, tasting the opponent's blood. I didn't expect to have the chance to see this terrifying man everyone feared. Jin Yin was tall and slender, but very tough. If it weren't for his eyes, which were gloomy and cold, he would be a very attractive person. However, his handsome face now only made people feel evil and demonic. In his 30s, he had the steadiness of a person in his 40s or 50s. After entering, his eyes only fell on Li Shi. It was as if Juanhui and I didn't exist. When Li Shi introduced us, he shook hands with us indifferently. Although he didn't say a word, I felt he knew us thoroughly. I tried to probe his mind and found it heavily guarded, indicating he was not as defenseless as Li Shi. He was undoubtedly an expert in mental science, and I needed to be extra careful in dealing with him. Li Shi ordered, Jin Yin, from now on, you will assist Sage Danjia in all aspects to help him complete his task. Jin Yan's eyes flashed as he looked at me. In his emotionless tone, he responded, rest assured, General, if the sage wants me to pluck the moon from the sky, I will help him fulfill his dream. Li Shi turned to me. Sage, this is the most valuable opportunity in your life to serve the Federation. Whether it's good or bad is all up to you. At dusk, the setting sun on the western curved horizon was just a dark red mass, and the city lights began to glow. Jian Yan, who was sitting beside me, spoke for the first time. The Dream Woman's followers only gather at this time. Sage, remember my instructions, or you will bear all the consequences. His tone was as cold as a blade. I replied calmly, I understand, but when I act alone, don't show yourselves unless absolutely necessary. Jian Yin said expressionlessly, that's for me to decide, not you. I shrugged in protest, turning my head to look out the window of the jet aircraft. Pantou Wu, the greatest city of mankind, was dazzling at this moment. Billions of tiny lights formed strange patterns, extending to every horizon visible. Our aircraft, along with 6 others carrying more than 100 plainclothes warriors from Jin Yan's elite unit, flew in a complete formation toward the east of the city. Outside the convoy, the space buses moved like fireflies, carrying people worn out from working to support billions back to their crowded homes. The convoy began to dive downwards. Pantou Wu's largest peace plaza was already in sight. The huge arch-shaped transparent canopy enclosing the plaza's sky was an easily recognizable mark from the air. The convoy slowly descended. Jian Yan's icy voice came through, remember, after we land on the helipad beside the plaza, you will enter the plaza alone, just like others who go there for fun. Don't look around for our people's whereabouts. If you encounter an emergency, just press the alarm button on the left side of your belt. I replied half-heartedly, every corner of Pantou Wu is under your tight control. What danger could there be? Jian Yin suddenly fell silent. I took the opportunity to guess his thoughts. This sudden attempt allowed me to capture what I wanted from his heavily guarded mind. It was hatred, uncertainty, and an image. The image was of an old man with a solemn face, long hair draped over his shoulders, and a clear, gaunt face. Although the federal government had banned all his pictures and text for 12 years, his voice and appearance were still familiar to the public because he led all humanity into the solar energy era. He was Dagashi, the father of solar energy, who disappeared in the temple incident 12 years ago. This also hinted that Dagashi was still alive and had even become the federal government's #1 enemy. The convoy passed through the opened anti-pollution shield and landed on the helipad. Jian Yin said, go out through exit 7 of the helipad. It leads to Peace Avenue. And the conveyor belt will take you to the destination in 20 minutes. It's all up to you now. I smiled slightly, left the aircraft, and walked toward exit 7. Pantou Wu was a veritable man-made forest. The so-called avenue was just a massive sealed corridor with an air purification system between buildings. Shopping centers and entertainment facilities were concentrated on the sides of these avenues. Tens of thousands of huge corridors connected the entire city, with armed police checkpoints stationed at critical intersections to prevent anything detrimental to the regime. I squeezed onto the electric conveyor belt, following the crowd, letting the 10-mile-per-hour conveyor belt take us to the plaza. There were people everywhere, tightly packed, making one lost in the human tide. Everyone was expressionless. Ironically, in Pantou Wu, people's physical distance was minimal, but their mental isolation was immense. Has civilization reached its end? No one noticed my existence, and no one noticed anyone else's existence. As we approached the open plaza, a few people rushed onto the conveyor belt from the side and stood beside me. Those pushed away remained silent, as if they had lost the ability to protest. These people just happened to sandwich me in the middle. I felt something was wrong, but on the tightly packed conveyor belt, unless I stepped off, it was quite difficult to move away from these people. Suddenly, on the back of the man in the dark coat in front of me, an image of a person appeared. It was like looking at a moving screen broadcasting images. I looked around at the people. They were all expressionless, blocking others' view, making me the only one who could clearly see the image in front of me. My gaze returned to the man's back, and I finally recognized who the image was. Dr. Han Wei, my classmate and friend. According to Li Shi, he mysteriously disappeared while investigating the Dream Woman. Han Wei's eyes showed a sincere expression, followed by a line of text appearing in the space above his head. Old friend, trust me, we need your help. The line of text kept flashing. I couldn't help but admire him greatly. Only this method could avoid the eavesdropping device Jian Yan had planted on me. But how could they track my movements so accurately? Could there be an insider in the intelligence bureau? Another line replaced the previous one, flashing. Find a way to ditch the intelligence bureau's people and go to helipad 19 in the plaza area. We have people waiting for you there 24 hours a day. The image disappeared. The conveyor belt slid downwards, turning into a descending electric staircase. The entrance to the plaza was in sight. Those who relayed Han Wei's message dispersed casually at the entrance of the plaza, leaving me to squeeze into the plaza alone. The artificial sun at the top of the plaza illuminated the space filled with tens of thousands of people as bright as daylight. I walked toward the central point of the plaza, the large fountain, blending into the crowd in the plaza. My mind was in turmoil. That brief contact told me that Han Wei had joined an organized anti-Federal Revolutionary Party. But how could they track my movements so precisely? Han Wei disappeared because of the Dream Woman. Now he found me. It was obvious he wanted to rescue the Dream Woman. Could I trust them completely? Could it be possible that this was Li Shi's way of testing my loyalty? I regretted not guessing their sincerity just now, but things came too suddenly. The open plaza was the only large activity space for the nearly 20 million residents in the Eastern District. However, the government planned to include it in the construction blueprint to deal with the growing population, demolishing it to build more houses. No one dared to protest because being blacklisted was an endless nightmare. The plaza was a sea of people. There were far more women and children than able-bodied men, possibly due to the government's large-scale conscription. No one knew where the conscripted soldiers were sent. Only the highest rulers would know. Zhuan Hui might also be one of those in the know. No one noticed my existence, and no one noticed anyone else's existence. In this densely packed metropolis, human alienation was even stronger. The more people walked together, the more they felt lost and alone. The sound of water splashing from the large fountain entered my ears. The water column, dyed in various colors by spotlights, sprayed straight into the sky and scattered, refreshing the spirit. A strange feeling suddenly entered my nerves. It was like an invisible shock wave spreading outward from a center. I gave up going to the fountain and squeezed towards the theater. That was the source of the shock wave. On the Goethe Theater's building front steps, hundreds of people sat, exhausted from walking. One group particularly attracted my attention, not only because they didn't interact like others, but also because I felt they were the source of the shockwave. They were all kinds of people: scholars, workers, professional technicians, some with their eyes closed, meditating. I knew I had found the target. They were the Dream Woman's followers. I was curious why they gathered so blatantly. Were they not afraid of the federal government dealing with them? I quickly thought of the answer. The government, which ostensibly pursued the rule of law, couldn't charge them with any crime. Who could prove this group of silent people violated the religious law? The Dream Woman was only detained for not having registration. Thinking of this, I wiped a cold sweat secretly. Only I had the credibility to prove their crime because I was a sage from the temple, an authority on mental confluence. I became the only one who could bring them to justice. But how could I do this? Especially after meeting the Dream Woman. My gaze roamed among them and quickly stopped on a woman. What attracted me wasn't just her doctor's uniform and her delicate face, but also the feeling that she was the core of the mental shockwave. Focusing my mind, I closed my eyes. My mental power shot like an arrow toward the center of the shockwave. It was like jumping into a sea of minds. I touched all kinds of emotions, feeling my power becoming incredibly strong. Soon, like a magnet, I attracted the scattered mental energies, forming a new center. My whole body trembled, and my mind rapidly withdrew. They trembled simultaneously, opening their eyes in confusion. That beautiful female doctor stared at me with her large eyes. I lowered my head to hide the shock on my face. What terrified me was my mental power. If before, my mental power was like the beam of a flashlight, it had now become a powerful solar-powered lamp. This was the power the Dream Woman gave me. This morning in the cell, she sent some strange energy into my body, allowing me to see others' minds more easily than ever before. But only now, through contact with her followers, did I realize I had transcended the realm of mental confluence, forming a mental magnetic field. What could I do next? I dared not try further, fearing I couldn't control myself. I looked at them again. They all stared wide-eyed, searching eagerly around. They were looking for the dream woman, but that beautiful female doctor had disappeared. I was about to leave. A gentle female voice behind me said, "Who are you? I know what you did just now." I turned to look, and the female doctor was staring at me, her almond eyes unblinking. I couldn't tell her what was on my mind because Jianyan had equipped me with a sophisticated transmission system. I couldn't talk to her mentally either. Jianyan could easily deduce that I possessed the dream woman's abilities, which would be the moment I met my end. I said calmly, "Miss, I don't know who you are." I turned and walked away. The opportunity came. In the split second of turning, I sent the message that the dream woman was imprisoned into her mind, telling her I would find a way to rescue her and ask them to rest assured. Yes, nothing in this world could stop me from rescuing the dream woman, even if it cost my life. I had fallen deeply in love with her and could no longer extricate myself. I entered the cell again. The dream woman's eyes opened and looked at me. This time, we easily established a mental connection. She immediately understood my thoughts, and her bright eyes sparkled with joy. I took her hand, soft and delicate. Although this was the third time I had met her, it felt like we had been passionately in love for hundreds of lifetimes. I pretended to be nervous. "I've knocked out the people monitoring us. Come, put on this uniform, and I'll take you out. I have a special pass. No one will suspect." These words were, of course, for Juanhui and the others to hear. The dream woman already knew my true intentions. She shook her head and didn't stand up. I shouted anxiously, "Don't you trust me? I risked my life to save you." These two sentences were from the bottom of my heart. She still shook her head, her eyes showing sadness. I heard her say in my mind, "It's useless. I've already given you half of my power, so you can lead the people outside for me. Let me die here." I screamed, "You must believe in my ability." I pulled her forcefully. She fell into my arms. I held her and walked out. In the adjacent surveillance room, 2 soldiers were knocked unconscious. It was Li Shi's arrangement. They were genuinely unconscious because I pointed out that the dream woman could observe their mental state. I helped the dream woman put on the uniform and a military hat. She was silent, her eyes filled with sorrow and endless affection for me. Her pale face, absolutely beautiful and solitary. I took her hand and walked out. 2 guards came towards us. This was, of course, one of Li Shi's arrangements. I showed them the pass and followed Li Shi's earlier instructions, taking 30 minutes to reach the nearest helipad. 7 twin jet cars and a smart model warplane were parked there, with only a few guards on duty. According to the agreement with Li Shi, I should board one of the twin jet cars. My mind reached out, probing the guards' thoughts, and I was overjoyed. They had only received orders not to stop me, but they didn't know which aircraft I should board, whether it was the jet car or the warplane. I looked at the dream woman. Her gaze was deep and calm, as if she had made some decision about the future. I slowly walked toward the designated jet car. The dream woman followed behind me. We stopped in front of the jet car. Crack. The door of the adjacent smart model warplane opened, and a Federal Army warrior class member stepped down. I called out to him, "Friend, what's your warplane's startup code?" The warrior looked at me in surprise. The warrior's eyes showed suspicion, and he glanced at us twice before walking past us. When the warrior entered the pyramid, my heart couldn't help but beat wildly. I looked at the dream woman, and she looked back at me. Courage surged. I grabbed her hand and hurried to the warplane, opened the door, climbed up, and then pulled the dream woman up. The guards didn't suspect a thing. I reached out and entered the warplane's central computer control panel code. Just now, when I questioned that warrior, my mind had probed into his mind and detected the code. The smart model warplane lifted off the ground, breaking through the air with a whoosh, shooting into the vast space. Like a bird escaping from a cage. The attack I feared didn't occur. It was imaginable that, caught off guard, Li Shi had no time to react. The dream woman calmly looked at the world outside the warplane. Pantou Wu's dominating forest stretched infinitely below. Civilization was just an endless nightmare. The warplane reached its maximum speed, heading east. My mind extended, tightly connecting with the dream woman's. "I will send you back to your people," hoping they protect and cherish you. She replied in my mind, "What about you?" I answered in her mind, "I'm not important. What's most important is that you escape their clutches." She sighed deeply. "It's useless. They will find us." On the first day they caught me, the Intelligence Bureau implanted a sensory tracker in me. There's no place in the city to hide from them. I cursed, that old fox. No wonder Li Shi was so indulgent with me, because he didn't worry about where the dream woman could fly. A feeling of indescribable frustration. Under the tyranny of power, individual strength is so insignificant. The feeling of failure and frustration arose. From the beginning, I knew I was playing a moth to the flame death game. But as long as I had the slightest strength, I had to give it all for her. Her mind lovingly caressed mine. The dream woman sighed again in my mind. "I want to go home." I cried out in astonishment. "Go home?" "Yes, I want to go home." Her gaze moved to the distant horizon of Pantou Wu. I was so surprised that I forgot to talk to her mentally, saying in confusion, "Outside the city is just a wasteland filled with radiation, chemical bacteria, and toxic gases after the nuclear war. How could your home be there?" "I am a new human born in the wasteland, someone born in the harshest environment. My people have all died, leaving only me. So I came from the wasteland to this sealed city, spreading the ability of our new human generation to struggle with adversity, spreading the love of the universe to you. But they have lived in a civilization that worships material things for too long. They still have a long way to go. Only you are the exception. So I am willing to dedicate my ability and love to you." I was stunned. My mind was in turmoil. What kind of world exists outside Pantou Wu that can nurture someone as beautiful as the dream woman? I turned the wheel. The warplane swiftly turned, flying toward the distant horizon. The city receded like a tide below. She and my mind were locked together, merging into one. "Danjia, what are you doing?" Li Shi's voice came through the communicator. He had incredible patience. Only now, when he was sure of my betrayal, did he speak out to question. I kicked out, and the communicator sparked, flashing a series of lights before falling silent. I had nothing to fear. At this moment, heaven owed me nothing. I felt the dream woman's boundless love. The universe was continually expanding, and the everyday world inside and outside humans was so dull and narrow in comparison. Life has never had anything to possess, so what can it lose? Pantou Wu's border appeared ahead. Suddenly, a strong light flashed. I looked back in horror. A supergiant Federal Army invincible war fortress was slowly descending from above, its bottom emitting a strong light, enveloping us. The warplane's power was utterly lost, and I couldn't even move a finger. As I thought of being captured, consciousness was also lost. When I woke up, there was no warplane, no dream woman. I was lying on an operating table, a soft light beam shining on my face from the ceiling. All around was silent and empty. Footsteps approached. A person came to my side, speaking softly. "Sage Danjia, how are you?" I tried to struggle up but found my whole body paralyzed, unable to move. The person lowered their head directly above me, letting me see them, but they were blocking the light source above. Backlit, they were just a silhouette. The voice was very familiar. "Don't you know who I am? Esteemed sage." I suddenly realized who he was and cried out, "Holy Master Majianum." The person laughed. "You finally recognize me." "I knew it. I am truly grateful to you. Without you, my super soldier plan might never have a chance of success." I shouted, "What do you want to do?" Majianum calmly said, "I don't want to do anything. I just want to transform you into a super soldier. You are my 183rd test subject. All the previous test subjects died because they couldn't withstand the transformation process. But you are different. The average person's mental energy is between 30 to 37 degrees, but yours is 586 degrees. So if you die, I can only give up this great plan." I panted, "Even if I become a super soldier, I will never cooperate with you." Ma Jianeng shook his head and sighed. "As a sage, your thinking is so naive. In the transformation process, I will use my most advanced method to completely remove your existing memory cells and replace them with a new set. You will become another identity, a warrior completely loyal to the marshal. You will be a loyal killing machine." I shouted wildly, "No, You have no right to do this. Where is the dream woman? Ah. A strong electric current flowed into my body from my limbs. Unable to bear it, I fainted. Vaguely, many things happened to me, and then it was a blank. An absolute blank? Waking up again. Consciousness entered my thought domain. I am Fang Zhan, a warrior of the 13th Legion of the Federation. The Federal Army originally had only 12 integrated legions, and there was absolutely no 13th, but no one knew how to describe us special warriors selected from the 12 legions and subjected to the strictest training. Therefore, we were called the non-existent 13th Legion, and the identity of each member of the 13th Legion was confidential. Usually, we were planted as ordinary members in various legions, taking on the task of surveillance. Only the marshal could command us. Initially, 3,000 people were selected to participate in the Special Warriors program, but after 3 months of selection, only 445 remained. Then came the no-withdrawal training stage, involving changes through medicine, physiology, psychology, and physical fitness. Only 36 succeeded, the others died. And among these 36, I was the only one chosen to participate in the esteemed Holy Master Ma Jianeng's Super Soldier program. A gentle voice said, "You woke up, Dan." I said in surprise, "Dan? I am Fang Zhan." Ma Jianeng's face showed a look of terror, and he coughed dryly, saying, "Sorry. I was confused for a moment. Fang Zhan, you have successfully completed steps 1 to 48 of the Super Soldier transformation process. Now, you've reached the final stage, which is to inject 2,300 watts of solar enhancement energy into your nerves, making you truly the first super soldier in the history of the Federation. Come, now completely relax yourself." Upon hearing this, I closed my eyes and almost at the same time, I entered a state of deep awareness, a half-asleep state. Only a warrior of my level could freely control their nerves. My limbs warmed. A strong heat energy rushed down from the top of my head, spreading to every nerve ending, then flowed back at high speed, bouncing into the nerves of the brain. All muscles contracted and relaxed. The heart pounded wildly. Blood surged throughout the body. A myriad of visions appeared before my eyes. I saw countless strange images, distant cities, abandoned ruins, and a pale, delicate female face that seemed very familiar yet so strange. Who was it? Boom, boom, boom. Over a dozen earth-shattering explosions occurred in the world of my nerves. The whole body trembled, cold sweat oozing from the pores. With supreme willpower and mental strength, I withstood the nerve transformation that would have killed others thousands of times. The immense solar energy was transforming my physique completely. The temperature continued to rise. It was like the sun was rising within me. Crack! A bolt of lightning struck across my visual nerves. I finally lost consciousness. Fang Zhan! Fang Zhan! I suddenly opened my eyes, meeting Ma Jianeng's excited gaze. Ma Jianeng's entire body trembled, and he laughed wildly to the sky. I succeeded. I succeeded. I created a super soldier. Danjia, you are my super soldier. I succeeded. I solemnly said, "Long live the marshal. May the Federation be everlasting." Ma Jianeng shouted, "Yes, the marshal and the Federation will be everlasting." I coldly said, "Holy Master, you called me by the wrong name again just now. I am Fang Zhan, the only super soldier of the 13th Legion." Ma Jianeng's face showed that incomprehensible fear again, and he stammered, "Yes, yes, you are Fang Zhan. Not. Not." I was too excited. I grunted, my eyes sweeping over the hundreds of instruments large and small in the laboratory. In 3 seconds of high-speed scanning, I memorized every reading in my mind. The billions of analytical cells immediately summarized and analyzed the information received into the nerves. In 1/10 of a second, I knew what state I had reached. It was an incredibly wonderful feeling to have complete control over how my brain operates. Ma Jianeng followed my gaze to one of the instruments and shouted, "It's unbelievable. Your physical ability has risen from 360 points to 1,200 points, more than 10 times the average of 100 points for ordinary people. Now you are truly a Superman." I pointed to one of the instruments. "What do these constantly changing color bars represent?" Ma Jianeng explained, This represents the cell growth ability within your body. If your arm were cut off now, you could grow a new one within 3 days. I smiled with satisfaction. Can you release me now? Ma Jianeng was stunned. I almost forgot. He was about to unlock the steel cuffs that bound me to the operating table, then suddenly stopped. I was immediately alert. A super soldier is never off guard. Ma Jianeng stared at me and slowly said, Fang Zhan, why don't you try breaking free yourself? I remained silent, and energy, following the central nervous system's command, spread to every inch of muscle. The muscles tightened. Blood vessels constricted. Explosive energy was brewing. Crack. The steel rings locking my hands, feet, and waist emitted a piercing sound, turning from bluish-white to dark red under the input energy. Pop, pop, pop. All the steel rings broke apart. Ma Jianeng was dumbfounded, unable to speak. I lightly bounced up, standing firmly in the center of the laboratory. The intercom in the room said, Warrior Fang Zhan, proceed to the launch pad. The destroyer is waiting. The destroyer is the 157th generation of the Federation's smart warplanes. Since the anti-nuclear weapon equipment appeared 700 years ago, the art of war has entered a period of comprehensive reform, especially with the invention of the unmatched laser. All warplanes and tanks have developed towards being slim, agile, flexible, and fast. Hulking machines of war can only become easier targets. In ancient times, warriors were helpless weaklings with no killing power. Encountering a warplane or ancient tank, they could only accept their fate. Their equipment was laughably simple. In this glorious Federation era, the most powerful weapon is a well-equipped warrior. They can cut through synthetic metal with a laser blade, block laser attacks with a laser shield, leap to the highest rooftop with a jumper, fly at high speed with a flying device, and absorb solar energy from energy satellites with an energy belt. I looked at Holy Master Ma Jianeng, a figure representing the pinnacle of wisdom. A strange feeling arose in my heart. I knew this was the first time I had encountered this scientific giant during the Super Soldier program, but why did I feel like I had known him for a long time? And that feeling wasn't positive. I even felt some hatred for him. Under my gaze, Ma Jianeng's hands kept moving as if trying to find a place to hide them, visibly uneasy. When I focused my attention on him, something strange happened. Everything became clear. I saw every inch of his skin exposed outside his clothes, every pore's condition, heard his accelerated heartbeat and trembling pulse, and even sensed the electrical energy passing through his nerves and the secretion state of his major glands. Why was this happening? With his status and position, why did he show a guilty state under my warrior's gaze? After all, I was just a successful test subject for him. Ma Jianeng stammered, "The marshal wants to see you." A rush of hot blood shot to my head. Nothing is more meaningful in this world than serving the marshal and the Federation government. The marshal gave us life and dignity, peace and stability. Although there are some insignificant rebels, the earth has never been as orderly and regulated as today. Now this great man wanted to see me. I shouted, "Long live the marshal," and walked toward the great door. The massive synthetic metal door parted in the middle. I stepped outside. The most terrifying super soldier finally stepped into this glorious century of war from the operating room. Half an hour later, I flew from the remote test site in the western suburbs of Pantou Wu to the pyramid, representing the power core of the Federation. The transmitter in the destroyer sounded, "Destroyer. Proceed to flyway 1 to enter the Marshal's palace." On the screen of the control panel, the constantly scanning circles and various geometric patterns showed that the computer on the aircraft was connected to the terminal computer in the control center of the pyramid, executing the landing procedure. A red dot flashed at the center of the screen, gradually expanding into a 3-dimensional red ring. I pressed the auto-landing system. The warplane hovered in mid-air, slowly descending toward the pyramid's tip. The marshal's palace was located at the pyramid's tip. The tower's tip opened like the mouth of a beast, devouring the warplane. I descended into a vast space. A passage slanted downwards. I activated the warplane and flew into the corridor. Huge steel doors opened in front of me one by one, like blooming flowers. The destroyer continued advancing under my control. The view suddenly opened up. Almost 10 smart warplanes were parked on the apron. The symbols on their bodies showed they belonged to the Marshal's Guard Corps, the most elite unit in the Federation Army, directly commanded by the Marshal. The destroyer landed in the flashing red circle. A burly man walked over, wearing sunglasses and sporting a mustache, his facial bones strong and prominent. The military uniform on him further accentuated the typical tough guy image. The man extended his hand toward me. Warrior Fang Zhan. Welcome. I am Major General Bai Fei, the commander of the Guard Corps. I firmly shook his outstretched hand. Bai Fei's eyes flickered. I felt him strengthen his grip on my hand. I smiled. Hecko, Major General. Bai Fei's face changed. I knew that if I used more force, his finger bones would likely break. Bai Fei hummed. Ma Jianeng's super soldier is indeed well-deserved. I added a bit more force to my grip, and beads of sweat immediately appeared on his forehead. He was a tough guy. Even at this point, he refused to beg for mercy. I coldly looked into his eyes, simultaneously scanning his body's state with my super senses, estimating his pain tolerance, and finding the lethal point that would cause his will to collapse if I wanted to interrogate him. To me, everyone was considered a hypothetical enemy, except for the Marshal. I only obey him. Bai Fei said, "You're not really serious, are you?" He was close to begging for mercy. I said coldly, "Besides you, who else knows my identity as a super soldier?" Bai Fei's face turned from red to white, and he quickly replied in the Guard Corps, "Only I know this secret. The Marshal has ordered me to cover your identity." I smiled slightly and released his hand. Bai Fei's face relaxed. "Come with me." The elevator took us to the entrance of the Marshal's palace. We saw no guards along the way, but I sensed 40 concealed observation posts monitoring our every move. The Marshal's palace was the most tightly guarded place in the pyramid. The synthetic metal door parted in the middle. Inside was an incredible world. A hall large enough to accommodate tens of thousands appeared. The hall's bottom was a square, but the top was triangular, with the peak reaching an astounding height of 300 feet. The four walls of the triangular hall were enormous screens showing a vast prairie. Herds of wild horses galloped around the hall's four sides in a 360-degree race, but no sound was heard. In the center of the hall was a huge desk, 4 sets of sofas, and 2 conference tables scattered in several corners. Compared to the entire space, these things were like pebbles scattered on the ground, insignificant. The ground was an artificial lawn, soft and gentle underfoot. A very tall and thin man in a wide white robe, refined and courteous, sat at the desk with his back to us, seemingly focused on the silent, breathtaking scenes on the circular screen. Scenes that should no longer exist. The wilderness and wild horses belonged only to ancient times. Today, the world outside the city is nothing but nuclear-polluted wasteland and ruins. Bai Fei said nothing and turned away. The door closed behind me. The vast triangular hall contained only me and the Marshal, the most powerful man in the Federation. I walked steadily toward him, stopping 20 feet behind him to salute. "Long live the Marshal." The Marshal sighed. "You are finally here." I was agitated. Fang Zhan did not let the Marshal down. I completed the Holy Master's super soldier transformation process. "Just give me an order, and I will give my life for the Marshal." The Marshal still stared at the wild horses on the prairie without turning his head. That was indeed a transformation, turning you from one person into another. "Fang Zhan, answer me honestly. Do you have the confidence to kill me?" My whole body shook and I knelt, saying, "Fang Zhan is the Marshal's soldier and would never even think about this problem." The Marshal nodded. "I do not doubt your loyalty to me. I am just testing your wisdom and ability." I said, "I have no confidence." The Marshal laughed. "You are the greatest warrior in the Federation. How can you have no confidence in killing me? You should know there are no visible or hidden guards in the hall." I reported with utmost sincerity, "Marshal. I am not lying to please you, but when I entered here, I naturally used my senses to inspect the equipment, including the weapons on you now." The Marshal maintained his back-facing posture. "What did you find?" I respectfully replied, "I found that there are 3 automatic devices in this triangular hall that protect you, controlled by a highly intelligent computer that is loyal only to you. It can react within 1,000th of a second, such as using a protective light shield to intercept any attack, even responding to attacks launched outside the pyramid. The marshal visibly trembled. How can you know so much? The computer I call Protector is not installed here, I said. It is on one of the artificial satellites in the sky. After becoming a super soldier, my senses can intercept any communication band, including the artificial satellites in the sky. More than 40 messages are input into my nervous system every second, which I then digest and analyze. The marshal fell silent. I knelt on the ground. The marshal asked, "Can you detect my thoughts?" I replied, "I do not have this ability." The marshal said, "Human brainwaves are also a band. Why not try?" "That is an order." I obeyed and focused my mind, gradually condensing my spirit. As I extended my spirit, a sharp pain suddenly hit my head. The marshal laughed loudly. "No need to try. I already predicted this. After becoming a super soldier, some abilities were given to you, and some were taken away." Very good, very good. Stand up." I clutched my head and stood up, completely unaware of what had happened or what he was talking about. The marshal seemed to be in high spirits. "You just said you detected the weapons on me. Tell me, what are they?" I analyzed. "In your sleeves are 2 laser knives, the latest Breaking Sun laser knives. With the right technique, they can easily annihilate a 100-man armed battalion. Just this alone makes me unable to kill the marshal without weapons." The marshal was interested. "Listening to your tone, it seems you found other equipment on me." I nodded. "Your spinal cord contains an energy belt that absorbs solar energy from artificial satellites in the sky, powering the flight device on your back. Your feet have jumpers, and your arms have deployable laser shields." The marshal sighed. "Incredible. If you had the same equipment as I do, would you have the confidence to kill me?" I estimated the chance would be 14.78% stronger because you, protected by the Protector, can exert full power, while I must use 70% of my power to counter the Protector. The marshal smiled. Good child. Good child. Fang Zhan, come and sit in front of me. The seat on the other side of the table is for you." Moved, I declined. "Marshal, Fang Zhan does not dare sit in front of you. Standing here will suffice." The marshal said calmly, "You must remember every word I say is an order to be executed." I saluted, lifted my left foot, stomped heavily, and took a big step around the long table to sit in the vacant chair opposite him. The marshal spoke with a gentle, authoritative voice. "Child, look at me." I raised my head to look at this great man. I finally saw the marshal face to face, not through television, posters, or photos. His real person was even more impressive and imposing. A broad forehead shone with the deep light of wisdom, a high, full-nose bridge, clearly defined lips, but most memorable was his smooth and white skin like a girl's, making him look not like a real person but like a living marble statue. He was so awe-inspiring that he could drive millions to serve him willingly. The marshal also examined me, showing a look of extreme satisfaction after a while, sighing, "It was successful after all. Fang Zhan, you will be my trump card, my secret weapon. Because of you, Ma Jianeng retains his position as Holy Master. Tell me, what do you desire to have?" He truly cared for me. Tears welled up in my eyes, making me so agitated that I stood up, moved back, and knelt, answering, "What I want most is to give my life for you." The marshal floated up like a cloud from his chair, gliding over the long desk to land in front of me, lifting me up gently, saying kindly, "Get up, child. I understand your intentions." His hand was warm and strong. I stood up fearfully. The marshal was the supreme being, untouchable. The marshal floated back to his seat, relying only on the positive and negative forces from his Breaking Sun knives to nullify the Earth's gravity. "Sit down." I sat down, waiting for his instructions. The marshal seemed to remember something and exclaimed, "I forgot you haven't had breakfast yet." Before I could refuse, he lightly clapped his hands twice. Smiling at me, the door opened softly, followed by the sound of a cart being pushed over the artificial grass path. The sharp cry of a girl rang out. I turned to look. A strange but very beautiful girl was pushing a cart, and it was her cry. She stopped, staring at me in shock. The marshal said, "You're all old acquaintances, So push the cart over and serve Saint Sage Danjia breakfast. Saint Sage Danjia? Ma Jianeng had also mistakenly called me Danjia several times. I looked at the marshal in surprise. His sharp eyes focused on my reaction. I wanted to speak. The marshal gestured for me to stop. The beauty walked to my side, softly greeting, Heko, Saint Sage Danjia. I responded politely, Heko. Her breathing and pulse were constantly accelerating, letting me know she was in an excited state. After setting everything up, she reluctantly left under the marshal's instructions. I looked back at the marshal. The marshal smiled slightly. Her name is Cece. She had a good impression of a traitor named Saint Sage Danjia. She always thought Danjia was dead, so she was surprised to see you. I asked in a deep voice, is Danjia really dead? The marshal's gaze chilled, coldly saying, he is dead. I pursued, why would Cece think I am Danjia? And why would you call me Danjia? The marshal returned to his gentle demeanor. Have you looked in the mirror since becoming a super soldier? I was taken aback. I haven't. The marshal said, that was my deliberate arrangement. I wanted to see your reaction the first time you looked in the mirror after becoming a super soldier. I felt a shock in my heart, sensing that something had happened. Zzz. A one-way mirror rose from the middle of the table. My face was reflected in the mirror. A completely unfamiliar face. My breathing immediately sped up, and I shouted, this is Saint Sage Danjia. The marshal looked at me through the one-way mirror. Your intelligence is indeed good. You guessed what happened. Yes, during your transformation into a super soldier, we also transformed your appearance and body into 100% Danjia. From today, you are no longer Fangzhan but Saint Sage Danjia. The mirror descended, disappearing into the table without a trace. This table had 13 weapons installed. Besides reflecting, this mirror could also resist attacks from death ray weapons. I regained my composure. What does the marshal want me to do? The marshal said, the manpower and material used on you could have equipped a 500-man special strike team. Still, the effect you might achieve could surpass an entire integrated legion. I have 2 tasks for you. If you complete them, I will make you the most powerful person in the Federation, aside from me. I sincerely said, I want no reward, only to serve the marshal. Good, good. The marshal clapped his hands 3 times. The door to the marshal's palace opened, and a stunningly beautiful woman, even more charming than the previous Cece, entered the hall in a military uniform, her head held high. Her eyes were on me, her expression seemingly calm, but under my extraordinary observation, she was just struggling to suppress the turmoil in her heart. When she reached the marshal's side, the marshal slightly extended his right hand, gently holding her slender waist. The woman was clearly a bit uncomfortable. The marshal's sharp eyes fixed on me. Let me introduce you. This is Sage Danjia's former lover, Special Envoy Junhui. I stared at Junhui in astonishment. Junhui nodded slightly. Dan. Then she lowered her head, sighing softly. I'm sorry, Heko Fangzhan. The marshal laughed, a laugh that contained a hidden sense of satisfaction. Special Envoy, you didn't call the wrong name. He is the genuine Sage Danjia. Only Danjia can carry out our Dream Girl cult plan. Junhui glanced at me, her eyes regaining their brilliance and sharpness. Fangzhan, from today on, you have become Sage Danjia. You need to read all the information about Danjia, including his past, personality, and friends. Once you grasp everything, you will understand how easily you can infiltrate the core of the Dream Girl cult as Sage Danjia. I said, so is my mission to destroy the Dream Girl cult? Junhui explained in detail, that's just one aspect. More importantly, you might be able to contact the rebels led by Dajashi through the Dream Girl cult and kill Dajashi. I was surprised. Wasn't Dajashi the former Holy Master known as the Father of Solar Energy? Junhui said, yes, but now he is the leader of the rebels. We believe he has successfully established several large-scale underground secret bases in the vast wastelands outside the city, plotting to launch a surprise attack against us. The marshal interjected, that is not our most troublesome issue, as we have a clear military advantage. We are concerned about their infiltration within the city. According to analysis by the Intelligence Bureau, the rebels have begun contact with the growing Dream Girl cult, seeking the whereabouts of Dream Girl. I was puzzled. With the Federation government's power, why not capture all the Dream Girl cult members in one go? Junhui explained, first, it's not an easy task, but more importantly, the so-called 12 seed saints in the Dream Girl cult are like the 12 disciples of Jesus in ancient times. Only they can spread and expand the Dream Girl cult. Your task is to find them and kill them one by one. I said indifferently, I will not disappoint you. Junhui seemed to freeze momentarily, her eyes flashing a trace of sorrow. Then she lowered her head. The marshal tightened his grip on her slender waist. With your intelligence, after reading Dan Jie's information, you can decide what strategy to adopt. I will give you a list of names, including the most important people in the Federation government. Except for those on the list, you may kill any Federation government personnel if necessary to gain the rebels' trust. Understand, Sage Danjia? I sprang up and saluted. Danjia understands. Please rest assured, Marshal. The Marshal smiled. Later, when you leave here, Special Envoy Junhui will take you to the armory to equip you with the same advanced weapons as those on me, making you truly invincible. I respectfully shouted, Long live the Marshal. Images kept changing on the screen. I saw myself conversing with Junhui and Major General Li of the Intelligence Bureau on the screen. Unconsciously, I carefully savored every word spoken. Since last night, in this hotel room overlooking the entire Pantou Wu, I have been watching for 18 consecutive hours the past information about Sage Danjia without feeling the slightest fatigue. Every image I saw and every word I heard was etched in my memory cells without omission because I am an unprecedented super soldier. After parting with the Marshal yesterday, more than 100 experts equipped me with the same advanced equipment as that on the Marshal within 5 hours, making me the most advanced armed person in the Federation besides the Marshal. The image on the screen changed again. In a spacious cell, under strong lights, a pale-faced girl sat quietly with her eyes closed. My heart shook, but I showed no emotion on the surface. In the super soldier's transformation process, illusions alternated in my mind, and the most profound impression was this girl's face. According to the data, she was the Dream Girl. Sage Danjia committed treason punishable by death because of her. The cell door opened. Danjia entered the room and sat in front of her. No one knows more about Danjia's information than I do. So I know Danjia was beginning his mind communication technique, establishing a spiritual exchange with Dream Girl. Suddenly, Dream Girl opened her eyes. A strange feeling rose from my spine, rushing straight to the back of my head. It was an indescribable feeling. My heart felt like a burning coal, and I almost cried out, reaching into the void as if trying to grasp something precious that had been lost. Dream Girl's eyes held infinite and endless worlds. The doorbell rang softly. I forcibly suppressed the uncontrollable emotions surging within me and said in a deep voice, Come in. Junhui's voice came from behind me, Fang Zhan. I interrupted her. I am Danjia, the mind communication expert Sage Danjia. Junhui changed her tone. All right, Sage Danjia. I turned to look at her. Junhui's bright eyes flashed with a strange sorrow, but it vanished in an instant, replaced by a cold ruthlessness. It was as if I caught something, yet it felt like I caught nothing. The feeling was far from pleasant. A super soldier is a person who can control himself. I must not let the honorable Marshal down. Junhui's eyes moved to Dream Girl and Danjia on the screen, calmly saying, Have you decided on your next move? I said indifferently, The special envoy should know my actions are only responsible to the Marshal. Junhui said coldly, Even though you have a special status, having one more friend is better than having one more enemy. There was a concern in her words, not matching her icy tone. But why would she care for me? Was it just because my appearance had been transformed to look exactly like her former lover, making her love the house and its crow? I don't understand mind communication, but with my superhuman senses, I can guess the other party's thoughts through their physical states, such as heartbeat, pulse, blood flow, etc. This is also my capital for pretending to be Saint Sage Danjia. I said, I don't need any friends. Then I stood up. Junhui's bright eyes flashed with that indescribable sorrow again. I took 2 steps forward, stopping abruptly when I was about to touch her firm body. She stepped back, leaning against the wall. I advanced a step, pressing her tightly against the wall. 2 bodies squeezed together. I stared at her pretty face. "You are indeed beautiful," Junhui calmly said, "but your body does not have the normal reaction of a man." I smiled. "I can choose to be the strongest man as I please. Do you want to try?" Junhui closed her eyes, and a tear rolled down from the corner. I pressed her, enjoying the satisfaction of inflicting pain on her for some inexplicable hatred. Junhui leaned against the wall, panting non-stop. You are not human. You are an inhumane killing machine." God, how did it become like this? I left her because my inexplicable hatred for her had been vented, and I looked at her coldly. Junhui leaned against the wall, panting non-stop. I said indifferently, "According to the information, you seem to be a person who would do anything to succeed. How are you any better than I am?" After saying that, I pushed the door open and left. There was not much time left, and now it was time for me to act. I piloted the destructor away from the hotel, heading toward the open-air square in the southern district. The dream girl's eyes kept swirling in my mind, impossible to shake off. They were so familiar and kind, yet seemed to come from a place so distant and strange, as if certain hidden cells in my body held indelible memories of her. A super soldier is supposed to have complete control over their emotions, so why couldn't I drive away the dream girl's gaze? I must consult Magellan about this crucial issue. The square was in sight. The destructor descended. I blended into the crowd heading toward the square. Everything seemed just like any other day. Pantou Wu's residents could find some excitement and escape from their dull, mechanical work in the various entertainment venues densely packed in the square. At the very least, they had a relatively spacious area to stroll around. The automatic passage moved smoothly. As I entered the corridor leading to the square from the landing platform, I felt others monitoring me. I dared not counter-survey them, fearing it might provoke their reaction, since the real Saint Sage Danjia did not have this ability. I could only wait passively, like bait on a hook. The hungry fish were already circling around me. They could be members of the Dream Girl cult, terrorists infiltrating the city from Dajashi's rebel party, or even agents of the Federation government or secret police from the Intelligence Bureau. To make it easier for the rebels to trust me, except for the limited few like the marshal, no one knew my true identity. So, for instance, when Li Shur of the Intelligence Bureau saw the traitor Danjia swaggering down the street, he would surely be shocked, then use every means to capture me. The marshal would then tell him another story. Danjia had already escaped. Since leaving the Federation Hotel, I had become a sought-after person on all sides. The difficulties ahead were foreseeable. The surrounding communications suddenly became frequent. I sighed, realizing it was the Federation government that had discovered my whereabouts, as only they dared use the main communication network so openly without fear of being noticed. Without hesitation, I concentrated on the energy belt at my waist. A surge of energy rose from my spine, entered my central nervous system from the back of my head, then spread to the cerebral cortex, where the energy gathered like a whirlwind, spinning at a speed of 2,500 revolutions per second in 2 seconds, radiating outward and embedding into the nearby communication systems and the satellites responsible for transmission in the sky. Thousands of signals were interacting. My cognitive cells operated at a speed hundreds of times faster than ordinary people, quickly capturing the messages about me. One segment of the message went like this. The Square District Commander requests instructions from Major General Jian Yen of the Intelligence Bureau. The whereabouts of Saint Sage Danjia have been found. He is on his way to the square. Please advise the next course of action. Jian Yan's voice came from the other end. That's impossible. Danjia and the Dream Girl were captured 2 weeks ago and have been sent to the guillotine. How could he still be alive and swaggering down the street? His usually calm voice turned high-pitched, revealing his shock. Should we apprehend him? Jian Yen ordered. Use every means to monitor his whereabouts and those he contacts. I'm on my way. Communication was cut off. For some reason, I really wanted to know the outcome of the Dream Girl. Was she sent to the guillotine along with Danjia, subjected to the primitive execution of the Federation's high-tech era? For now, I was safe. The square was in sight. The escalator began to tilt downward, turning into a descending staircase. I didn't let any information around me slip by. Suddenly, my spirits lifted. I caught a nearly imperceptible signal. This signal's frequency was much shorter than the Federation government's official frequency, obviously to avoid interception. I adjusted my brain's sensory nerves, intercepting the signal. Danjia has appeared. Proceed with Plan 1 immediately. The signal was cut off. I breathed a sigh of relief. The big fish had finally arrived. The square was teeming with people, with thousands of small crowds gathered around street performers. The wealthier ones stepped into boxing halls, opera houses, cinemas, and amusement parks scattered throughout the square, paying the high ticket prices to pass the time. The atmosphere was very lively. I wandered left and right among the crowd, looking for a target and allowing others to find me. Suddenly, I felt something, and music blared. A group of people walked toward me. They held various musical instruments, playing as they walked. It seemed like a marching band parade, but my superhuman senses had already detected that I was their target. I pretended to be unaware. More than 20 band members came up to me, then dispersed, engulfing me like an amoeba. I feigned surprise, shouting, "What are you doing?" A trumpet player dressed as a clown came up to me, tiptoeing and entwining her hands around my neck like a water snake. From her curvaceous body, I could tell she was a young girl. Her vividly red and exaggerated lips moved close to my ear, saying, "Saint Sage Danjia, we are your friends. Please fully cooperate with our arrangement. The secret police are coming to arrest you." I said, "I'm not afraid of them. At worst, it's death, but I want to find the Dream Girl cult people to tell them a crucial message." The girl dressed as a clown said urgently, "We are the Dream Girl cult. Please follow us." She raised the trumpet and blew a long note. This immediately triggered a chain reaction. Several groups of hundreds of people each outside the band heard the trumpet and dispersed, flowing in all directions. The square seemed to be struck by a stone, creating an artificial ripple that gradually spread to every corner of the square. Those who had never been to the square might not understand what would happen if chaos broke out. This vast artificial space that could hold 800,000 people comfortably and up to 1.5 million if all facilities were counted. The Dream Girl cult used the crowd to render the Federation police, equipped with advanced gear, powerless. The Dream Girl cult was indeed a mass-based organization and force, just as Li Shur had suspected. However, the secret weapon sent by the marshal, would destroy it from within. The crowd moved like waves. Uninvolved people began to feel the turbulence, heading to the 20-some exits to leave the square. The band put down their instruments and quickly changed their clothes. Two girls came up to me, draped a dark brown cloak over me, and took me into an opera house on the left. "This is the Federation police. Everyone, stop moving immediately," the square's loudspeaker announced, but it had the opposite effect. Those hiding before also started moving. That kind of panic was hysterical and unconscious. The situation was completely out of control. Everyone was eager to leave for reasons unknown. The only reason chaos didn't erupt was that the Dream Girl cult was still secretly controlling the crowd's emotions. Nothing could escape my observation. In an instant, I found myself being led down a quiet corridor toward the backstage by the two girls. Where were they taking me? It wasn't time for the opera yet. On both sides were doors, probably makeup rooms. The girl on the left opened one of the doors. We stepped inside. I glanced around and was shocked. In this storeroom, 10 men in black, fully armed, had been waiting. Their helmets were air helmets, capable of functioning in a vacuum, and the black clothes they wore were metal fiber woven vacuum suits. When the two girls led me in, 10 pairs of eyes were on me. Judging from their builds, 4 of the 10 were women. I said in a deep voice, "You're not from the Dream Girl cult." One of them said, "It makes no difference. We're all people who want to rescue the Dream Girl from the Federation government." His voice came through the air helmet, sounding distant and unreal as if from outer space. I shook my head. "If you don't reveal your identity, don't think I'll go with you." One of the women said urgently, "We don't have time for explanations. If you don't want to fall into the hands of the Federation government, you must cooperate with us fully." I shook off the two girls holding my arms and smiled. "Do you believe it? If I wanted to, I could kill myself anytime. What can the secret police do to someone unafraid of death?" From the Dream Girl's information, I knew the core members of the Dream Girl cult all had the ability to commit suicide without external forces. The woman wanted to say something, but the man who had spoken before raised his hand to stop her. The man was clearly the leader. His sharp gaze pierced through his helmet's visor, staring at me for a while before saying, "To the Federation government, we are revolutionary rebels. We are the Freedom Front fighting for ideals. Your good classmate, Dr. Hanwei, is now one of us. Time is very urgent. Whether you come with us is up to you. We won't force you." With my superhuman senses, I detected the girl behind me on the left pulling a stun gun from her bag. So, even if I refused, they would take me by force. I couldn't help but laugh coldly. Everyone stared at me, waiting for an answer. I looked at the girl ready to fire the stun gun and smiled. "If the answer is no, you'll inject me with the tranquilizer, right?" The girl opened her mouth in shock. The man laughed, as expected of a master of mind communication. "No thought can escape you, so you should know if we are sincere." Honestly, whether they were sincere or not, I would go with them. Otherwise, how could I meet Dajashi and kill him? I nodded. "Fine." The man breathed a sigh of relief and signaled. A few people immediately came up, fitting me with an air suit for operating in a vacuum or underwater. Soon, in appearance, there was no difference between me and them. A creaking sound. A tunnel opened in the floor, revealing a slanted slide. I asked, "Where does this lead to?" One of the girls who had brought me here answered, "It's the water pipe." I suddenly realized that beneath Pantou Wu was a vast circulating water system. Wastewater would be filtered and turned into clean water, circulating continuously to supply the entire city. This system spread to every corner beneath the city. If the Freedom Front knew the system inside out, they could come and go freely, like ghosts. The leader stretched out his hand for a handshake. "My name is Deshawn. At the bottom of this slide is a large net. Now, we go one by one every 30 seconds. Once the net stops, you must roll out. Otherwise, there might be unnecessary collisions." He gestured, and one of his subordinates lay down at the top of the slide, letting go to slide down into the darkness, the sound quickly fading. After 5 people, it was my turn. Suddenly, a strange sensation covered my body, like a breeze brushing past. But it was energy particles interacting with my body, creating the wind. I sighed. The Federation government had discovered our location. Their environmental scanner had just detected the life energy formed by our body heat, pinpointing our position. Only Jin Yan's elite special unit had such advanced tracking and searching instruments. No one else was aware. Because they weren't super soldiers. My senses extended with the electricity from the energy belt at my waist, like an octopus, through the walls. In an instant, I sensed a 100-strong special assault team rapidly approaching using flight devices. Deshawn pushed me in the back, urging, "Hurry up." I turned around and pushed him toward the entrance, saying, "I'll follow." Deshawn hesitated momentarily, stepping onto the slide top, saying, "You're next?" I nodded. Creak. The wall near the door crumbled like sand. I turned back. Including me, 7 people remained on the surface, including the 2 girls who had led me here. Fully armed special unit soldiers flooded in like a tide. The 4 rebels raised their weapons. Zap, zap, zap. Over a dozen beams flashed. The 4 rebels lit up transparent white, turned red, then melted like wax. They were finished. A ball of light exploded in the room. A powerful heat stabbed into my brain nerves. The special unit had detonated a stun bomb. The 2 girls collapsed. Jin Yin flew in, his eyes incredulously fixed on me, the only one standing. I moved. The great super soldier moved. I bent over, powerful energy surging from the energy belt into the solar rupture beam knife in my forearm. Thud. A stun dart shot toward me. To ordinary people, the stun dart's speed was beyond the naked eye, but to my super senses, the dart crossing more than 20 feet felt like an eternity. My left hand flicked, energy surging, forming an energy shield between me and the 20-some wolfish special unit members in a thousandth of a second. My right hand extended forward, the beam knife slashing out. Crash. Over 20 soldiers screamed, blown back like leaves in a storm. None would survive. Jin Yin was the best. He barely raised the beam shield to block my attack. I lunged forward like a leopard. I had to end this quickly. I had the element of surprise, but once the enemy was prepared and reinforcements arrived, even I wouldn't know if I could win. The beam knife crossed more than 10 feet, stabbing at Jin Yan's vulnerable spot on the right rib outside his beam shield. For some reason, I hated him intensely. Jin Yan's body exploded with a rain of shattering light, staggering back. Although he used the beam shield to block my attack, my solar rupture's unmatched power paralyzed him completely, making immediate counterattacks impossible. I rolled to the ground, spinning like a ball, appearing instantly at his right side. A beam shield is essentially an energy mass. When a beam knife penetrates this mass, its molecular energy changes with astonishing speed, dismantling the beam's cutting power. However, it can't protect every part of the user. Like ancient shields, it has strong points and weak spots. Skillful use of a beam shield is a modern soldier's top priority. Otherwise, they can only become lambs waiting for the beam knife's slaughter. White light burst from my left hand. The beam knife stabbed at Jin Yan's right flank, where the beam shield couldn't reach. Jin Yan was also a first-class soldier, screaming as he bounced off, flying back like lightning. The beam knife missed. In a flash, he became a small dot. Although I didn't know why I hated him, since he posed no threat, there was no reason to kill him. Otherwise, how would I explain to the marshal? Besides a floor of beams' scorched remains, only the two fainted girls were left. Luckily, they wore suits, saving me a hassle. Thought and action united. I grabbed them like toys, leaping onto the slide while the beam knife stabbed backward. Boom, boom. The walls at the exit exploded and melted, sealing the enemy's pursuit. We shot down simultaneously. The beam flowed backward, melting everything we passed so that Jin Yan couldn't follow even after regrouping. I dilated my pupils, like a cat, gathering the faint light. Combined with my extraordinary sensory cells, the scene became clearer. The tunnel sloped straight down. Every 100 feet, it leveled off before sloping down again, each acceleration balanced by another deceleration. Whoever designed this slide had deep knowledge of mechanics. Otherwise, the high speed alone would be unbearable. After another level slide, there was another slope. By now, we were at least 2 miles underground. This made me re-evaluate Dajyashi's rebels. Constructing such an escape route under the Federation government's nose required remarkable planning, organization, and strength. No wonder the marshal sent me as a secret weapon. I stopped sending the beam backward, because the signal waves I sent out had detected the slide's end. The slide leveled off. I pretended to panic, clutching Dina and Dumay as we slid to the end, slowing down until we reached the end, falling into a net. Deshawn and the 6 others anxiously waited. Deshawn rushed over, grabbing me, asking what happened up there. Someone took the 2 girls from my hands, shouting. They were drugged. It was chaos. I told Deshawn. No time to explain. I looked at the 2 girls. Is there a way to wake them? Deshawn didn't answer, asking instead, was it the Federation Army? I nodded. It was the Intelligence Bureau's special unit. Deshawn was shocked. Let's go immediately. I looked at the 2 fainted girls. What about them? Deshawn's eyes behind the helmet's visor showed an unusual mix of determination and sadness. There's no way to wake them up immediately. They can't control the propulsion unit skillfully due to the coma, so we have to leave them behind. I said coldly, you want to kill them, right? Deshawn's body shook. What choice do we have? They know our escape route. How can we leave 2 living witnesses for the secret police? I said nothing, grabbing the 2 girls. Where to? Deshawn, stunned by my strength, said, they'll slow us down. I said coldly, if you waste any more time talking nonsense, you'll really slow everyone down. Deshawn, knowing there was no room for argument, stomped and headed for the passage's end. I carried Dina and Dumay, following. If I were the humanist Saint Sage Danjia, taking these 2 girls would be the most appropriate reaction. As his imposter, shouldn't I do the same? The other 5 stood on a large pipe, silently waiting. Deshawn ordered, take over Dina and Dumay. We'll take them with us. The 5 hesitated, realizing this would greatly reduce their chances of escape. I said firmly, no. I have more advanced propulsion units than you. Otherwise, I couldn't have escaped the secret police. I guarantee I won't be slower with them. Deshawn wanted to speak. Boom. An ominous sound came through. Deshawn's face changed. Let's go. Squeak. A massive 30-foot wide water pipe's top opened, but no water poured out. It was an entrance equipped to counter water pressure. 2 rebels jumped in, disappearing into the pipe. Deshawn gestured for me to go first. I moved to the entrance, lightly jumping in with Dina and Dumay, entering the water inside the pipe. Under the overhead lights, a completely different world unfolded. The greenish-blue pipe walls extended infinitely on both sides. I emitted detection sound waves, confirming we were at a junction in Pantou Wu's underground circulating water system. From here, we could go to any corner of Pantou Wu. The others jumped in successively. We swam with the water flow toward the endless distance. The front 2 sped up suddenly. I calmly activated the propulsion unit on my back, catching up in an instant before slowing down. An hour later, we turned left and right, at least 50 miles from the starting point. I didn't know their destination. Along the way, we encountered over a dozen detectors monitoring the water pipes. Deshawn detected them first, using a small device to interfere with the detectors, allowing us to pass safely. To achieve this, they must have had detailed plans of the underground water system, indicating a traitor within the Federation government. I had to report this to the marshal in detail. Otherwise, the internal decay would destroy the Great Federation. In front, Deshawn suddenly stopped. His voice came through my helmet. We've reached the first target. Deshawn ascended to the pipe's top. A round exit at the pipe's top opened slowly. By my estimation, we were now in the Eastern District's core, above ground in the densely populated slums where anti-government sentiments ran high. Setting up a base there was reasonable. This method of escape using the underground circulating water system had to remain highly secret and consumed massive manpower and resources. More importantly, it could only be used once because once the Federation government knew, they would immediately alter and strengthen the entire waterway surveillance system and thoroughly investigate the secret tunnels leading to the waterway, as well as trace the rebel who leaked the waterway secrets. Here was the problem. Why would the rebels make such a significant sacrifice for Saint Sage Dangia? They knew the waterway had inestimable military value. Second, my appearance was very sudden. Who could make such a decision in such a rushed time? Did it mean the dream girl was more important than we imagined? 3 rebels climbed up one after another. Deshawn's voice echoed in my helmet. Saint Sage, it's your turn. You're far more extraordinary than we expected. I smiled slightly, hugging Dina and Dumay, and emerged from the hole. Outside the hole was a 400-square-foot room with an elevator waiting at the top of the entrance. The 3 who went up first stood inside. Soon, everyone was inside the elevator. The door closed, ascending quickly. I asked, "Where are we going?" Deshawn replied, "The secret police will soon find our escape route, so the only way is to leave Pantou Wu immediately." I was stunned. How can you leave Pantou Wu under the Federation Air Force's watch? Deshawn gave me a faint, profound smile. His eyes turned to Dina and Dumay, held on either side by me. Instead of answering, he asked, "Saint Sage, you are far more extraordinary in strength and equipment than our information suggests. Could you explain?" At the same time, Dina and Dumay moved slightly, and 2 beam guns pressed against my vital points on both sides. Knowing that when a beam weapon is fired at point-blank range, any beam shield becomes useless. I wasn't the least bit surprised. Long before leaving the water pipe, I knew they were gradually awakening from the slight activity of their brain skin. I also detected their secret communication with Deshawn. That was a signal transmitter and receiver in the eardrum that used bullet lengths to send only signals they could understand. Therefore, Deshawn learned from them that I rescued them from the secret police. Why did I have the ability to do this? I made Deshawn suspicious of me. Everyone who went up was holding a weapon, and the sound of more than 10 breathing persons reached my ears. Deshawn, watching me sternly, raised both hands. His forearms were also equipped with more advanced beam knives than beam weapons, though not comparable to my solar rupture. I stared deeply into his eyes and smiled coldly. "Friend, I just guessed your thoughts. Your dilemma can't be hidden from me." Deshawn nodded. "Yes. If you were a fake who had undergone plastic surgery, you shouldn't have risked bringing Dina and Dumay along. No one would know what happened when entering the slide, and you could make up any story. I smiled faintly. I have no interest or time to prove what I am or am not, nor interest in dealing with you. My only concern is contacting the Dream Girl cult's core members to convey a message from the Dream Girl. Deshawn stared at me silently. I sighed. I pretended to be angry. If you don't trust me, we should part ways here. Better than wasting time like now. At this, I turned around. What I saw made even my composed self shudder.